What is up, guys? XiangLing here. Yoimiya just got released on the Asia servers, and so I wanted to make this video to give you a quick first impression on my thoughts about Yoimiya on a budget tier, because we ended up testing Yoimiya on two different accounts at C0 with a couple different weapons such as Rust, as well as Thundering Pulse, as well as a bunch of different team compositions. So I want to make this video to let you guys know my thoughts on her and if you guys should pull or not. So to begin with, you can see here this Yoimiya is level 80 out of 80 and has 2,179 attack. And for the crit ratio, it has 64.9% crit rate and 153.4% crit damage. So this is kind of fairly low. And then for the artifact stats, the headpiece here has 10.9% crit rate as the only offensive stat on it. It's a crit damage gladiator helmet. The goblet is a pyro goblet with 16% crit damage, 6.2% crit rate, so it's not like super impressive or anything like that. The hourglass is 6.6% crit rate and 18% crit damage, not very impressive again. And the feather is 10% crit rate, not super impressive either. And then the flower is 7.8 crit damage, 5.3 attack, and 12% crit rate. Not super impressive, not bad either on that. And the set bonuses is Shiminawa as well as gladiators, so it's only attack plus attack on here. So for the first showcase, we're going to be using a team of ZhongLi, Bennett, Kazuha, and Yoimiya. And this team basically just showcases Yoimiya's damage alone without sub damage, although this is like 3 of the best damage boosters in the game, obviously. And so you'll see here that Yoimiya is actually doing pretty good damage hits with like 12k, 29k, 13k, 25k, things like that. And it's pretty awesome on floor 12-1. But you got to also keep in mind that this is just using 3 of the strongest people again. But on the beneficial side, this Kazuha is C0 and he's not using like Freedom Sworn. He's using an Iron Sting, as you can see here. And so Yoimiya is doing pretty good damage, like 17,000, 13,000 with an R5 Rust level 90 with level 6 Talents level 80. So I do think her damage holds up, especially as a single target DPS. However, when it comes down to multi-target, I think like it also still holds its own, but other characters such as Yinfei, XiangLing, Klee, Diluc, Hu Tao, every other sort of pyro DPS, they can do this exact same thing in multi-target. In single target, Yoimiya will still probably pull ahead, but there's not much content in this game which heavily requires you to do single target outside of like overworld things with world bosses and such. But I don't really think that matters too much because you have infinite time to kill world bosses and overworld things. I don't think you should be stressing over saving like 2 seconds or a couple seconds here and there when you fight things. So the next composition I'm going to be showing is I'm going to be showing the same exact team, but replacing ZhongLi with a C2 XiangLing you see there with his level 6 talents. I changed the Staff of Homa for Skyward Spine so it has less damage. And so it ultimately has 1479 attack with a 40% crit rate, 85% crit damage ratio. And it had the emblem set, so you can see here that it's not a super big powerhouse for damage. You'll see here, despite not having ZhongLi, this sort of 4-star budget type of support still ends up helping with the AoE that Yoimiya provides, as well as proccing the bloom from Yoimiya with Kazuha's ultimate as well as XiangLing's ultimate to be able to clear very quickly still. The auto attacks are going to be, you know, still roughly the same because XiangLing provides that minus 15% power resistance where ZhongLi provides minus 20%. So it's not too big of a change up. And so if you guys don't have ZhongLi, it's not that big of a deal, as she died there. I do want to say, though, that if you do have a higher Constellation XiangLing, it could actually end up outperforming ZhongLi, but ZhongLi does provide that safety net so that people don't die. But C4 XiangLing allows you to have that increased ulti damage as well as that increased duration by 40% more. And C6 XiangLing gives you 15% increased pyro damage bonus as well. So the next test I'm going to show is the test using a bunch of overload with Yoimiya, Beidou, and Fischl. You can see here that this Beidou has 1600 attack. It's going to have a talent level of 9 and 8, so it does have past C2 constellation, which is the important part. And the weapon it's going to be using is a level 90 R3 Serpent Spine. But I do mess up in this test and I don't put Beidou in the first slot for her to get stacked. She's going to be using 2-piece Noblesse, Oblige, and 2 Gladiator. For the Fischl, she has 1600 attack with 61% crit rate and 141% crit damage. She is going to be C2. She's not going to be at her optimal game of C6 for the rapid machine gun to do the multi-hit to try to proc overload even faster. So for the first test, we are running Bennett with Yoimiya and Beidou with Fischl. So it's going to be double power, double electro. Beidou is in the first slot, and we actually do end up waiting for her stacks for this test. So you'll see here of the full potential of an R3 Serpent Spine, you'll see that these guys are dying pretty quickly, but it slows down due to the fact that they have Electro Aura, and we end up running out of Pyro damage to be able to peel these off. In any other situation, this should be good, but under our floor 12 chamber 1 combat, Beidou ends up feeling a little bit bad here, as you guys saw from the other two teams. We ended up clearing those Nobushi pretty quickly. Over here, it's a little bit slow. It's going to happen the same way against the Kairagi. So this whole overload idea isn't so great, where people are thinking that hitting multiple times over will make overload strong, but overload being a fixed damage number, as well as like, it's not like it's happening in an extreme rapid case. Once again, this is not a C6 Fischl, so it should happen faster with like optimal setup and optimal idea, but it's still not that great. It's mostly just Beidou's damage being Beidou, as well as Yoimiya plus Bennett's setup doing most of this damage here, rather than the overload spam. One other thing I do want to show you guys here is Yoimiya's auto attack damage without Kazuha. You'll see here she was doing about 18k, 9k, 7k, 12k, things like that, and that's a lot less than the numbers that Kazuha is showing with the 25ks, 30ks, 50ks and such. Really quickly, I also ran a team by replacing Bennett with Sucrose, so we could increase the overload damage as well as have pyro resistance down. However, you can see kind of that it did roughly the same or not so great, especially considering that we don't have a healer anymore. So this isn't a super practical team composition. This next team comp we're kind of showcasing here is going to be the standard Bennett, Sucrose, XingQiu, and a pyro DPS such as Diluc, but in this case we're using Yoimiya. You'll see that this team does do quite a bit of good single target DPS because XingQiu's ultimate single target as well as Yoimiya's hits. However, because it's mostly single target, you'll see that the damage is not like multiplied on top of people, and we have 3 dudes who are all kind of close to death, to the point where we end up taking longer than most of the other team compositions we ran. However, if you ran this sort of idea in a single target fight, I'm sure it would do well, but once again, there's not a lot of single target fights out here outside other than overworld or world boss type things, where it doesn't really matter how long you take. For the rest of these tests, I end up using another account that has also a level 80 Yoimiya with 2,193 attack, and the overall stat line for crit is 57.5% crit rate and 242.5% crit damage. The weapon is a level 80 Thundering Pulse R1 on this account as well, and the talents are once again 666. Here I ran the same ZhongLi, Bennett, Kazuha, Yoimiya team to kind of showcase the amount of damage a Thundering Pulse did compared to a R5 Rust. You'll actually see here that we actually end up doing a little bit less damage than the Thundering Pulse did, and that could possibly be due to the fact that Thundering Pulse is level 80, as well as Kazuha on this count had about 720 EM compared to the other count, which had 900 EM. That ultimately ends up being about like a 7% increased damage bonus for Pyro. However, if you look at this weapon comparison spreadsheet that I did not create, and I'm sorry, I actually don't know who created it. It was one of my viewers who ended up linking to me. I will link it down in the description below, and if you guys do know who it is, you guys can be sure to comment as well too, and I'll put it in the description as well too. But if you see here, an R5 Thundering Pulse will do 156% damage, while R1 does 125, and an R5 Sky Harp does 115, and then the R5 Rust ends up coming around at 114. So an R5 Rust comes pretty close in comparison to an R1 Thundering Pulse or a R5 Harp. So for the next comparison, I ended up taking all of Yoimiya's gear and putting it actually on Hu Tao piece for piece and giving Hu Tao a deathmatch to try to even things out. It's an R1 deathmatch. However, this Hu Tao is level 90, so the comparison is a little bit unfair, but I did want to see a little bit of a comparison between other Pyro characters. You'll see here that this Yoimiya is doing pretty good AoE and able to deal with a lot of these other Nobushis and other masked characters because she does have that benefit of her ultimate hitting a wide range, as well as her charge attack being able to pierce through and hit multiple enemies. You'll see here as she fights the Kairagi, she's able to kind of hit both of them at the same time occasionally, as well as with the ultimate chunk them, and then she has the ability to control whether she wants to hit one target or 2 targets based on how you do the jump cancels or dash cancels. So that is quite nice. For this next test, I end up replacing all the gear from Hu Tao over to Klee, but this Klee is level 90 as well, and it does have level 10 auto attack and level 8 element skill and level 8 burst skill. So this comparison is once again not really fair, but this is just a first impression thing. These are borrowed accounts of viewers that are on Asia because I cannot summon on my NA account. So when I can summon on my NA account, I will do a more fair comparison because on my NA account, all of my characters are level 80 and level 6 talent. And you can see here that this Klee absolutely obliterated all the enemies, as well as she will do pretty good damage on the Kairagi, except she died here. And that is kind of one of the downfalls of Klee. She does have one of the lowest defense values in the game, so despite having ZhongLi shield, she will still get absolutely shredded. This is going to be another look at the run here, where you'll end up seeing that Klee still ends up killing the Nobushi really quickly. And then from here, the Kairagi also will take massive damage from Klee's huge charge attacks at this level here. Along with Kazuha's damage bonus, Klee is really not that great in an elemental reaction team comp, but when she just relies on her pyro damage alone, she ends up performing extremely well as a pyro DPS. In this last test of Pyro v Pyro v Pyro, all of Yoimiya's gear is put onto a level 80 XiangLing with the deathmatch that Hu Tao had. You'll see here that it absolutely kills the Nobushi extremely quickly, and we move on to the Kairagi. However, because this is Yoimiya's gear and we are running a deathmatch, it has virtually no ER, so we are very much so struggling trying to get XiangLing's ultimate again. However, when it does come back up, she does do a lot of damage with it. In this test run, she does unfortunately die, but within the ultimate duration remaining left, we end up killing the Kairagi fairly quickly. So you'll see here, I end up using Kazuha's burst to swirl the pyro, but she dies here, but the Pyronado is still spinning and still going, and you'll see here that a lot of damage is being put out to end up killing these Kairagi really quickly as well. In this next bit, I'm going to be trying to show you guys how small the radius of the ultimate really is. You'll see this one Nobushi kind of come close, and I'll hit the bloom, and you'll see the guy on the left didn't get hit, but the guy on the right does. So they kind of have to be right next to each other. So you have to kind of use a Nemo character like Venti or Kazuha or Sucrose or anything of the sort to try to make them all take damage from the bloom, which can be quite troublesome, especially if they are heavy targets that can't be CC'd or pulled in or whatnot unless they're frozen or petrified. One thing I do want to note is that I was actually kind of surprised of Yoimiya's targeting against invisible targets. Right there, I ended up shooting at nothing, but other than that, like, the bow ended up still kind of shooting the guys despite being invisible. And when it came down to the Sinsin mages and the Mirror Maidens, the auto-targeting of the bow was actually kind of okay as long as they stayed pretty close. The moment that they were pretty far, the Yoimiya bow would end up starting to hit at the flies, such as this here, where you'll see the Sinsin mages right here in front of me and then teleports away, and as soon as it teleports away, I'm just being blockaded by a army of flies until I get up close and personal so that Yoimiya can just shoot them point blank, regardless of if there is other targets in the way or not. So to summarize my findings, Kazuha was her best match, just like any other pyro DPS. Overload was a lot less impactful than a lot of people hyped it up to be. XingQiu Sucrose does appear to work pretty well, but it's more of a single target situation than anything else. And in comparison to all other pyro DPSs, she really didn't stand out to me, because when I was thinking about it, I was wondering, what does she do in a unique form compared to other pyro DPSs? And I really couldn't think of that. XiangLing is a great pyro ulti support or a main damage dealer. Hu Tao can work with XingQiu Sucrose in an immense way with AoE or single target. D-Luke has a lot of AoE going for him. Klee also has a lot of AoE and explosive nuke power. Same thing with Yinfei. And I just really couldn't find the niche that Yoimiya does work in. She does work as a pyro DPS, just like the others do. So if you guys really like her as if she is your waifu, I can definitely recommend that you guys can go for her and you will enjoy her. However, if you guys don't have any affinity attachment to her, I really don't think there's a real big reason for you to pull for her when any other pyro DPS could slot in for her as well. That's going to be all for this video. I do want to apologize that it did end up being a little bit longer than intended, but I did want to showcase the clips of a lot of the tests I did to help develop my opinion on her. as well as keep in mind this is a first impression video. Once she does come out on NA, I will try to summon for her, and I will try to use her in conjunction with all these level 80 characters with level 6 talents, so they are more fair comparisons, as I do have gear sets as well for them. Hopefully this video helped you guys understand a little bit more about Yoimiya, as well as the team composition she does work with and how well they end up working on. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think about Yoimiya, as well as please do consider leaving a like, subscribe for more Genshin content and guides, follow me on Twitch to watch these little tests done live, as well as follow me on Twitter for quick updates on the game, as well as short guides. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!